Hey everybody, welcome back to the Nat Bros podcast. This is actually going to be a slightly different podcast than what we've done before, mainly because Andrew and I ended up finding that we really enjoy talking about marriage, and we kind of want to share that with you. It has nothing to do with the series we've been doing in sovereignty. It's just kind of our thoughts on our marriages and kind of the discussion that we have around that about like loving our wives and some of the challenges that we face because of things that we've done in the past or because of how we interact with our wives or even just when we've been in the past when we've done certain things and then that leads over into our marriages, and we just kind of talked about that, and we just want to share that with you, so let's get into it. Just as I'm recording, my wife walks in. About to like deluge into like all the like messiness of like our relationship. Look at this. And then she walks in. Baby, I'm talking about you, okay? Yeah.
Corbin Dallas. Corbin Dallas.
Nice.
Lead
No, that is not the truth. That is my made-up fabrication for certain people that I don't quite feel comfortable enough. But now that we're putting it out there, I mean, pretty much anybody will be able to find this out.
Has Mama been sending you a podcast?
Nope, not me. That's fantastic. Mom sending you podcasts.
Anyways, let's dive into your dichotomy of a relationship.
Not a dichotomy.
Let's be honest here. Not saying that I am the best to be giving relationship advice, but I have had a lot of classes and books that I've been reading here lately.
That is true. So to an extent, I think it would be kind of interesting to kind of get this idea from you and see. So basically, yeah, I'm gonna do my best to make this a short story, but you know how I am with short stories. I make them as long as possible. Yeah,
Corbin Dallas. Corbin Dallas.
Nice.
Lead.
Corbin Dallas. Lilu. Oh! Oh man, such a great movie. Anyway, so my wife and I had sex before we were married. Even to the extent, God, I'm going to put this on the podcast, or she's going to shoot me. But I mean, I may as well put the truth out there and just let it be. So she was a student of mine, and this is like I'm supposed to be a Christian missionary in China.
Hold up. Let us further go into that. She was a adult student of yours.
It's a valid point.
And the relationship did not start until after she was no longer an adult student of yours.
Nope, that is not the truth. That is my made-up fabrication for certain people that I don't quite feel comfortable enough. But now that we're putting it out there, I mean, pretty much anybody will be able to find this out. No, she was a student of mine at a university. She was an adult student. She was at university, so she was definitely over 18, so there's no like statutory rape or anything going on. And so she was an adult student. I think she was 19 or 20 at the time.
Is that a law in China? No, I'm just joking.
So theoretically you're not supposed to like theoretically you're not I don't know.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It was just a joke.
Let's just say it's not good, regardless of whether it's allowed in China or not. But She was a student of mine, an adult student. And here I am in China, and I'm supposed to be a Christian missionary in China. And I definitely was not living the example. Because that's very important, especially for what comes next. So we're in a sexual relationship, and I'm still trying to minister and teach other students about God and talk to them while still keeping this sin in the background. And then, because of the fact that I have this internal conflict between myself wanting to continue having sex with her and the way that I know that God is like, no, you shouldn't be having sex with somebody unless you're married to them, and having that belief, but then also wanting to continue the sexual relationship, there were many times where we would be together, and then I'd be like, "Hey, we can't do this. I got to break up with you." Like, and early on, it was just a sexual relationship for me, but very early on, it was much more than that for her, and so and for her coming from a non-Christian background and not understanding why, because it was perfectly fine to have sex before you're married in China to an extent, but for her, she didn't understand why I kept breaking up and then getting back together, because that's what would happen. Is I would break up, and then like a week later, I'd invite her over to my house, and then we'd end up having, or my apartment, and then we'd end up having sex together. And then I would, break up maybe a couple weeks later, and then maybe a week or two after that, we'd get back together and have sex again. And this went on for probably almost a year, I would say, almost a year. And so we broke up and we got back together probably, so I'm going to say 6 times. 6 times prior to February. That we started our relationship in March of 2013. Or no, I'm sorry, not 2013. Of 20. Crap, I keep forgetting this. 2015. 2016. 2016.
26.
Started our relationship. And then by February of 2017, we had broken up 6 times. But in February of 2017, I just ultimately made the decision, I'm just going to keep staying in a relationship with her because it's just not fair to her. Now, that's what I say, and in my mind, that was the internal dialogue. But I wanted to, I think there was also
that was an
extent
excuse.
looking back. I mean, it was no, but it was true, but also because I didn't want to continue breaking up and being back together, breaking up, getting back together, breaking up, getting back together. I felt like that was just kind of like being an asshole to her, which it was. But then also, I was already going down this path of like, examining myself and like my beliefs and stuff. And so then in June of 2017, I left China, and we still maintained a relationship online during that time, but she still wasn't a Christian at the time. And basically, I ended up while I was in the States, I ended up breaking up with her for the final time. Uh, Basically, to kind of just, I wanted her in my mind, and this is in my mind. It made perfect sense. Every time we broke up, it made perfect sense. And so this time it was in my mind, I wanted her to become a Christian, not because of me, but because she wanted to become a Christian. I didn't want it to be because I had heard horror stories. And again, not actually like actually doing the research and finding out if these were
You
true.
didn't
But
want her to resent you for being like forcing it on her.
no, well, yeah, well that, but also I wanted her to come to her own faith and her own belief, and not because she loved a man who also had that faith and that belief. And so I ended up breaking up with her again for the final time. And then shortly thereafter, she got baptized and became a Christian, said that she believed and all these things. And I was like, yay, great. So we got back together. And ever since then, up until May of 2019, we ended up getting married. And so, but when I got back to China in February of 2019, it wasn't like, oh, okay, we're good. We're both Christians now, and we're just not going to have sex, because we still fell into that. We still very much got into that, and we even had a church here that said basically, one of the leaders of the church was basically like, listen, guys, you can't be taking the you can't be taking communion if you guys are still living in this life of sin. He's like, just go and get married now. That way, you guys aren't living in sin any longer. And it's like, like, okay, that's a valid point. Like, that makes sense. Okay. So then we ended up kind of like bumping up because originally we were going to get married February of 2020, which thank God we didn't do that because COVID and all. And so we ended up moving it up to May, got married, and then ever since then, everything's been perfect. Except it hasn't. And probably one of the biggest reasons
What
why.
has been your biggest struggle with your marriage?
Probably the biggest struggle. And I would say I would blame this on the fact of our relationship where it was like kind of like back and forth. Where it was like on again, off again, on again, off again. To begin with, we would argue about just stupid stuff. In my mind, it was stupid stuff. Again, in my mind, it was stupid stuff. For her, wasn't stupid at all. Made perfect sense. Me, I'm just like, why are we arguing about going out to eat? But it was something about money. It's like, all right. We finally delved down and we finally ended up kind of like breaking down probably a year after we were married. And we finally ended up kind of figuring out, so the biggest problem that we're facing, and like it took me time to figure this out, but like what would happen is ultimately like we would have a disagreement. Now we would have a disagreement. Like I want to go spend the money. No, we're not going to go spend the money. We'd have a disagreement, but then she would freak out, and I'm like again in my mind, freak out, and I'm like, what is happening? And then she would get like incredibly like sad, start crying, be depressed, and I'm like, what is happening? Well, we were just talking about going out to eat or something. Or we were talking about how this particular like clothing isn't right, or how we need to move this, or we need to do that. And I'm just like, I don't understand why this is all of a sudden happening to like be like screwing stuff up. But then I ultimately realized, and finally like, and through some help of some friends, came to find out my wife has a problem with security. She doesn't feel secure in our relationship. Not that she doesn't feel like I can protect her. Not that she doesn't feel like I can provide for her, although sometimes that does pop up every once in a while because of some past financial issues that I had and that she helped me out of. She's a little concerned about that.
You mean
to
tell me what?
It was the whole aspect of like when I was back in the States using a credit card, having to pay it off. She came, brought the money over to pay it all off. And she's like, you needed me. I was like, listen, I didn't need you to pay it off because I would have been able to get it paid off because I had a job that was paying good money. I just needed to pay it off a little bit at a time. It was incredibly useful to be able to get it done like that. Okay. It was great. So fast forward to this whole concept, this whole idea of now she's not feeling secure, but she's not feeling secure in the fact that we're going to remain together no matter what the argument is. And so that leads into, so we may have an argument, but then that argument gets exacerbated because of the fact that in her mind, I'm going to divorce her. Because in her mind, because we have this argument, because we have this disagreement, I'm going to cut things off. And I'm like, why in the world do you... I was like, our relationship prior to getting married was wrought with constantly breaking up and getting back together and breaking up and getting back together. And so in her mind, and even to this day, there's still some of that precipitates. So for her, the arguments that we would have are exacerbated by the fact that before we got married, there was on again, off again. I was constantly like dating and then breaking up, dating, breaking up, dating, breaking up. And so now she feels if there's some kind of problem, some kind of issue that we have, that may be a minor issue, a small issue, I'm going to divorce her. I'm going to cut it off and just be done with it. And I'm like, I don't understand why that happens. Like, what in the world is going on? And then it's like, oh, yeah, that happened in our past. That did absolutely happen. It was on again, off again. But the on again, off again wasn't because of something that she was doing. It was because I was having an internal crisis of faith, an internal crisis of who I am as a believer.
Right, so
and also,
basically, you kind of damaged her.
Yeah. I mean, like I'm absolutely the cause of the reason why she feels that way. And And so, like, even now to this day, like, I have to make sure that she understands that that had nothing to do with her. It had everything to do with me. And right now, even though we're fighting, that I'm not all of a sudden going to just cut ties and just be like done with her and like I'm out of here. This shit sucks. I'm out. I'm not gonna do that. And so, kind of trying to express that to her and trying to rebuild. But that to me is one of the reasons why having sex before marriage is a huge issue. Um, especially for believers. Now, if you were to have sex before you're married and you're not a believer, I still think that's a bad idea because I think there's a lot of another other like emotional and psychological impacts that could have. But as a Christian, I'm going to say it's not a good idea. Don't do it. But you do you, boo boo. But if it's a Christian, then I'm going to be like, listen, as a guy, to an extent, sex is just sex and it's whatever. But that's not exactly true because, like, as long as you have the belief of being a Christian and a belief in God, you're always, if you're out here having sex, you're always going to be fighting against yourself. You're always going to be feeling that. Unless you go in and you find in the Bible where, like, you use the Bible to prove that it's okay to have sex. You're like, oh, look, in Song of Solomon, it says, I love my woman and I love climbing up her body and, like, grabbing onto her boobies. Okay, cool. But that doesn't necessarily prove that having sex before marriage is a great idea or an okay idea. And so, like, yeah, you can go in and you can nitpick and cherry pick certain things out of the Bible and say, like, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. But overall, if you look at Scripture as a whole, it's a better idea not to have sex. And so you can't be a Christian having sex outside of marriage or having premarital sex or an adulterous relationship and then find yourself okay when you try and reassess it and see your life in the light of how God would see your life. And so, like, that's the biggest thing for me is like that's one of the challenges that even to this day I still have. So, Andrew, in your wisdom, what would be your advice in all of the things that you have learned and been reading and stuff?
I mean, you're right. You have trained her to be fearful. I mean, I am myself in the same boat that anytime I bring how I feel up to anybody that I'm in a relationship with, instantaneously it becomes that. They call it flooding.
Okay.
So what happens is, before you know it, you get in this immediate fight or flight mode, and hers is clearly a fight mode, which a lot of times causes probably you and myself included to run away from it because we are like, look, we don't want to deal with this. Like, I don't know what's going on. you need to get your stuff together.
Listen,
And
I'm good. You get
so,
your stuff together.
well, that's what it is. So what they say is like you have to have guidelines. You have to have a set of rules of how you're going to pick through these issues. So, for instance, Nick, you're sitting here arguing about how much you don't want to spend the $5 it costs to go out and eat. And, she sees it as something else entirely, right? So it's not just that. It's like, for me and mine, it's, listen, I'm coming to you right now. I'm telling you about a problem I have with something that's going on or a feeling I have. Not in any way is this an attack against you. Not in any way does this mean I'm going to hate you or want to leave you or anything like that. This is simply how I feel. And I feel like you should be open to hearing it. Not all the time does it work out for me. 110% never really does work out for me. But at the same time, it's understanding the fact, which, you're doing pretty good. The fact that you understood that you kind of put yourself in that own situation. That's good. You realized.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're a step above where most men are like. This is her problem. I don't know what's wrong with her. You kind of see it as like you're able to see, hey, I did this to her. So now you kind of have to. I don't know. I hate to say it, walk on eggshells. Now you kind of have to.
Well, and I don't want to say like, oh, okay, like I figured it out like instantaneously first time. It took me time. And like
Well, it's
we're not
also
gonna get into it
it's
tonight,
also
but
like for me, I don't express my concepts and feelings the way someone else might understand it. Like for me and you, for instance, I'm gonna say something, and I think because of me and you being brothers and so close over the years, we'll understand what each other means.
mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I say something to my kid, or I say something to my wife, and she's like, "I don't understand what you're saying." I get so upset by the fact that I have to sit there and explain it over and over and over again. Well, and the other thing, the same way, is like just feelings and emotions. Like I'm coming at you this way, and you don't see it that way because you're not understanding my feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, let's see. So, hear me out on this.
Okay.
Do you know the number one thing women need? Has
Security.
Mama been has Mama been sending you a podcast?
Nope, not me. That's fantastic. Mom sending you podcasts.
And what's the number one thing men need?
If I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, having kind of like delved into this, it's like achievement
No,
or a challenge.
negative. What is the
Okay.
one
Okay.
thing a man needs out of his relationship?
Respect.
There you go. Okay, okay,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
So your wife feels insecure,
Mm-hmm.
and at the same time, oh man, it's such a vicious cycle. And let me just
Yeah.
paint it for you perfectly as I can. Your wife feels insecure about a issue you're having, and then you feel disrespected by how she's treating you after that,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's like, then you get into that whole give and take thing. There's a giver and a taker in your body, and you're 100% not willing to give, and she's not willing to give either. So you're both in your own little mental state of hatred, or discontent, or not really wanting to help each other out. So then what happens? You're fighting for yourself, she's fighting for herself, so then y'all just keep on keeping on and keeping on. And then, you know, what changes it? What breaks you out of that? One of y'all has to give, right?
Right.
The question is are you the bigger person? We're sitting here going through this sovereign man thing.
Mm-hmm.
You should step up. I step up. It's like I see where you're coming from, and I'm gonna not do what I would normally do because I know that that's what it takes to get past this. So,
Mm-hmm.
for instance, I go to my wife and I'm like, "Hey, I don't like you doing this," and instantaneously it's a fight. She's yelling,
Mm-hmm.
she's upset. I'm like, "Listen, time out, take a break. We're not arguing about this. I need you to understand where I'm coming from. I'm not coming at you as an attack. I'm coming at you as a conversation to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't want to be that bad guy, because, I have the tendency of she'll want to fight, I want to run, and then I'll
Mm-hmm.
keep running, but then she'll pursue. And then what
Mm-hmm.
does that make me do? That makes me fight back,
Run.
right?
Yeah.
No, no, I'll
Oh,
fight back
I
hard.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like, recognizing when you need to just stop and cut it off is one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
recognizing also, and that is the other thing. She says it so much, and it's not wrong. It's irritating, but it's not wrong.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
it's don't worry about what they're doing. What are you
mm-hmm.
doing? You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know, you cause this whole issue. So what are you doing to show her security when you're not in an argument? What are you doing? They call it the love bank and a lot of books we're reading. What are you doing to make
Mm-hmm.
those deposits to make her feel secure, make her feel
Right.
loved, make her feel adored? You know, did you tell her she looked nice in her dress today? No, you didn't. You should do that. That would help you a lot. You know,
You're right. You're right.
Simple things is like that. Did you hug her? Did you kiss her? Did you hold her hand? Figuring out what those things that are important to her, because there's not just that. There's also there's a group of 10. I don't remember. Uh, do I have the
Well,
book in
I
there?
would even say, especially for my wife and I, is like that is definitely something like I love to like hug her, I love to kiss her, I love to hold her hand, like, and those are very like big things that we that I try to do. But even to that extent, like telling her that she's beautiful, like I need to be more adamant about that. Like she even, it's actually interesting, like to kind of go into this, it's actually interesting because she'll even like ask me for like compliments, even if it's like something like for me, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that's good. I forget to tell her that that's good. Like if it's like she's cleaned the house, I come back from work and the house is nice and clean, like I'm like, oh wow, okay, this looks nice, but that's internal and I don't actually express that out. And then she's like, hey, did you see the house? What do you think? I'm like, oh, right. I need to tell you that. Like, that's something that I've got to be more adamant about. But on the other side, too, about this whole idea of security is making sure also that she understands that no matter like no matter what happens in our life together, I'm going to make sure that we're taken care of. I'm going to make sure that we are going to be okay. Like even though in my mind, because like I've told her times, I'm like, babe, I feel lost, and she thinks that being lost means A, I don't want to be with her anymore. B, the reason I don't want to is because she's preventing me from doing what I want to do, and C, that I'm gonna like take off and find somebody else who will make me a better man. And I'm like, none of those are applicable to my thought of being lost. But again, going back to that idea of security, she feels like those are applicable because that's what it means to her. And so, like, I have to be very mindful of how I communicate to her. And then I open up completely and say, when I say that I'm feeling lost, it doesn't mean you're the reason that I'm lost. You're the reason that I'm not doing what I want to do. It's not, even though she's told me, like, she doesn't want me to do acting because she doesn't want me kissing another woman. And I'm like, I don't necessarily have to kiss another woman nor another man in order to be an actor. Like, those aren't necessarily like, the same like necessary things, but she feels like every time I say like, oh, I want to do this, then what that means is that like, or like if I want to become famous, or like wanting this podcast to get bigger and wanting to reach more people, she's like concerned that when that happens, all of a sudden I'm just going to slough off her and go off and do my own thing because of that security idea, the whole concept. But I'm like, no, like I've promised you, and I know that I like before, like when I said like we're together and then we would break up, like that seemed like it was a promise, and I can tell you right now that wasn't anywhere near a promise. That was just me being a stupid boy and just being like, okay, I'm going to tell you, what's going to be good, and then get what I want, and then when I feel bad about it later on, then I'm going to be like, oh, I can't do this anymore, and then but I'm like, I promised you that I would be with you for the rest of my life, and that I would make sure that A, you were taken care of, and B, that I would always love you and be with you, that I would, going back to sovereignty, that I would always protect, that I would always provide, and that I would try and lead you in that way. Like, and like, there are definitely things where I need to be more of a leader that I'm not, like, especially in our relationship with God. Like, I'm definitely not in that leadership part as much as she has been. And I need to get that back. I need to make it to where it is a priority where I say, oh, we need to get closer to God. We need to be reading the Bible more. We need to be praying more. We need to be finding people that are good for us more. And it needs to be my responsibility, not hers. And I think that that's where also another issue of security comes in. Did you find what you were looking for?
Yes, I did. Let me ask you a question. So you said something about recognizing when she does housework versus,
Mm-hmm.
you're supportive of her. So, my spouse and I had a conversation the other day
Mm-hmm.
about, um, which I don't know how it started, but the sum it up was like, you know, every day I go to work and I come home and I play with the kids and I put the kids in bed. Is that enough for me to show that I care for you? And
Mm.
of course, the response was no. Even though I feel that's me showing that I love you,
Right. Right.
That's not it. I said, so on the flip side, you're sitting here cleaning the house and doing laundry day in and day out, but that is not to say that that is what I view as like you love me. So, for instance, I get up on Saturday and I'll do the dishes, and I'll get up on Saturday and I'll clean the bathroom and stuff like that. I don't know that that's necessarily helping, but that's me showing you that I'm trying to help you out with the chores that
Mhm.
you do every day. Maybe that helps, maybe it doesn't. The key is just like finding out what I can do that is important to you and what you can do that's important to me, and working those out in our day to day lives. And
Yeah.
so, like, that brings me to the point of like the book, one of the many books we're reading, Fall in Love, Stay in Love, or what's the other one? His Needs, Her Needs. They're both
Hmm.
by the same author, but he says, um, as spouses explain to me what they wanted most, I classify these desires in emotional need categories. And almost all those I interviewed described one or more of the same 10 emotional needs as important to them. Now it says, you pick the top five for you, your wife picks the top five for herself, right? And nine
Hmm.
times out of 10, they are not the same, you know? But that's what it
What?
is.
No
That's
way.
what it is. So, like, for instance, the 10 of them are admiration, affection, conversation, domestic support, family commitment, financial support, honesty and openness. That's one. I established that was one because of honesty and openness. I was like, that's two. No, that's one. Physical attractiveness, recreational companionship, and sexual fulfillment. 10 of them, right?
Yep.
So, of course, mine and my spouse don't necessarily agree. She wants domestic support. She wants family commitment. She wants financial support. She wants honesty and openness. And she wants conversation.
Hmm.
My question to her was like, "Are you sure those are what you want?" Because I'm not sure that you understood the question. But, don't argue about it. Uh, Mine is admiration, of course. Mine is affection. Mine is honesty and openness. Mine is recreational companionship for sure. Like, I want to be able to enjoy doing stuff with you. That's
Hmm.
how I view that
Hmm.
as.
Yep.
And there's sexual fulfillment definitely doesn't fall too far from that list. Or
Right.
maybe that was
Right.
hers and mine was a different one. But anyways, the point is once you establish what you both find important, every day you make an attempt to do something to show that you care about what they view as important.
Okay.
Which I'm not saying like every day you're gonna get to be able to be like, hey, look, I did some laundry for you, or I did, and don't ever say that too because they don't view that the same way. Don't say I'm babysitting my own kids because it's not babysitting. Even though it's kind of funny, like I've been seeing like everybody says that I gotta babysit my own kids. It's like that's what it is. I mean, if you're not used to taking care of your kids, you babysitting them. But to try and wrap this one up, I don't know if you wrote those down. If you didn't, I can email them, text them to you. Um, Finding out what she needs on a day to day basis to feel uh, secure, I guess, in your relationship. I asked
Right.
my wife the other day. I was like, "Listen to me." I was like, "I did the dishes, and I did this, and I did this, and then when we have an argument, your comments are like, you never do anything around the house." So then I don't feel like doing any of these things anymore. And that's just
Right.
me being me. That's any person taken. I said, that being said, tell me what I can do that'll make you feel like I love you every day. You know, that you make you feel secure. You tell me what I can do. Not you, little man. I'm talking to Uncle Nick. So, so her comment was making sure the kids don't end up in the bed at nighttime. I was like, that's it. That's what I can do. I was like, kicking the kids out of bed. She's like, well, that's part of it. I was like, no, no, no. I was like, that's what I want. This is your chance to tell me right now what you need from me. And like, it's like, do you even know? You know, have you stopped to ask yourself what would make yourself feel more secure in our relationship? You know, for me personally, security is not something I need. It's not something you need. Respect is something I need.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is like, no, I'm not saying you have to mind me. I know I'm not saying like mind what I say goes. What I'm saying is how you interact with me, how you interact with people that I love or I care about, how you react to these things. That's your respect for me. You know, there's times where my spouse goes a little too far off the deep end. It's like, listen, you're wrong for this. I was like, and you're reflecting poorly on me. And like, she didn't like that. She's like, oh, so you're saying that because I'm making you look bad, that I shouldn't do it? I was like, yes, yes, you are making your husband look bad. I was like, do you not care about how I look in public? Do you not care about my respect and who people think I am? You know, I'm not saying that's where you're at, but the point is, it's like that's what's important to me, and I have to express it every day, just like she needs to express to me what she feels like is important every day. You know,
Right.
for her, it's a whole bunch of me just going to bed with her on time. You know, she hates when she wakes up and I'm holding a baby in their own bed. But then, you know, it's like that give and take thing. It's like, you don't want them in our bed, I go and lay down with them in their bed and I pass out. That's all there is to it. And something I wanted to tell you that I liked the most was like, they talk about when you first get into a relationship, um, you know, you love them, you fall in love with them, but then at the end of it all, you know, you have like different types of commitment, you know, 9 different types of
Mm-hmm.
commitment. And like what I liked about it was like he said, you may just be holding on to one rope, one thing. And he's like, you know, and that's what it is like you're holding on to that for dear life, trying to hold it together, you know, just to build it back up. And like that's kind of like what I was trying to explain her to her.
Mm-hmm. Good choice.
Yeah. That, you know, we've been in a horrible place for a minute, and like
Mm-hmm.
this is the only rope I'm holding on to. And you know, you don't have to like it. You know, I certainly don't like you sometimes, and you don't like me sometimes. But the point is, it's like we're holding on by whatever we can, and you can't sit there and fault everybody. Like, you know, I'm not saying like you're fighting constantly with your wife or like you're all bouts of arguments, but it's like, you know, the best way, Mister, a friend of ours, you know, that runs a children's home, said to me
Mm-hmm.
is like remembering who the enemy is and how
Mm-hmm.
good he is at showing you somebody else to be the enemy. So remembering that you and your wife are on the same team, even though it doesn't feel
Right.
like it, even though she makes it impossible to seem like you're on the same team, you know, because you know you're there sometimes, and I'm there sometimes. You know, she makes it hard to believe you're on the same team sometimes.
Yep.
You know, but you are, and remembering
Yeah.
who the enemy is. And in case people don't know, you know, if you're watching this, we were talking about Satan because we're very religious people. You know, knowing that, and you know, you may not believe in Satan, but the world in and of itself is a form of chaos. You know, everything wants to return to chaos. That's what it is. You know, and you're trying to fight that chaos, your order,
Mm-hmm.
control, whatever you believe in. You know, God, don't believe in God. You believe in chaos, don't believe in chaos. I don't know what you believe in, but you know, there are things working against you in this world, whether you believe it or not, that make it so easy to point at your loved ones as being the bad guys versus everybody else in the world.
Or
But I
maybe not
say,
just not maybe not just everybody else in the world, but even like making your loved ones out to be the bad ones when potentially you are the one that's at fault. or potentially that there's this assumption that you have about like how things are supposed to be because you see in like whether it be entertainment or you see other people who seem to have their lives put together perfectly and you're like, I should be like that. Why is it not like that? Why are things not like that? And just understanding, not saying that those people are the enemy, but it's more of your desire to have that perfection, when in all honesty there's no such thing as perfection in this world, where it is that understanding that your wife is human and you are too. And so being able to kind of understand that by nature we tend to be like selfish people. We tend to be people who want what we want and don't really want to give what the other person wants. So yeah.
Like I said, read chapter 14. Sit down with your wife, pick out what you think are the top five, and let her pick out her top five. And y'all may not agree with what you think each other's top fives are,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
because I definitely don't agree with what I think she picked, and I know she didn't agree with what I picked, and I
mm-hmm,
don't know that I
mm-hmm.
necessarily agreed with what I picked. It's like, do I really believe that? What do I, search
Well,
yourself,
I'm
sit
sure
your
it
own soul.
changes. I'm sure it changes over years, like years of being together. Like maybe that entertain or is it entertaining companionship uh, or whatever that is. Maybe that entertaining companionship is like changes. Like maybe it
Mm.
changes into something
I
else that
agree.
you
I
pick up.
agree. There's one principle of like, you need to stop and come back and have a meeting every couple of months just to regroup and make sure those are the goals that you set. Again, goals change
Yeah. Yep.
once desires change.
Yep. Okay.
But
Cool.
I'm Andrew, and this is my dear brother Nick, and you have an open invitation to our conversation. I'm wrapping this up quickly because it is midnight and I worked in like 6 hours and
Cool.
wrapping
Perfect.
it up.
So as always, we thank you for being here. And go ahead and give them the line again.
You have an open invitation to our conversation.
Peace.